Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Cellular and Wireless Unmasked. I am Martin Hevesy, and today I wanted to walk you through something that's very topical, very near and dear to a lot of people right now who are working from home. I want to talk about Wi-Fi mesh networks, some of the home internet basics, what all the terminology means, and when you might want to consider using a mesh network versus a traditional single Wi-Fi router. So let's jump right to it. So let's talk about the evolution of the home internet and how we went from really slow ancient computers that were sporadic in nature to really computers and Wi-Fi in every house. Home internet started back in the days before we even had the dial-up 56K modems. There were some really slow peer-to-peer networks. But when the internet took off in the late 90s, you started to see this dial-up protocol. Everybody had a 56K modem. You fought over the lines in the house. They all shared that same twisted pair landline for your modem services, and that really made it slow, and things didn't take off for a long time until you got to the ISDN, or one of the first digital lines to the house, the Integrated Services Digital Network. This was limited to about 1 megabit per second on the download, and it really took the internet to the next level, made it quick, made it very practical for people to start to work from the house. It wasn't super popular. It was very expensive because it was a new technology. When things hit the DSL or the ADSL timeframe, the average speed there you're going to see is about 50 megabits a second. This is what a lot of people used. DSL uses your twisted pair as well, but it's an all digital. It's ADSL, and we'll talk about the A, which stands for asymmetrical. But this really made it easy for people to use internet at the house. It made it fast, made it reliable. So asymmetrical digital subscriber line means you've got a lot more of your bandwidth reserved for download, because most people use download more than upload services. So from your point of Wi-Fi to your devices, that's download. From the device back to your Wi-Fi router, that's upload. So asymmetrical digital subscriber line means the bulk of the bandwidth is reserved for download. So what you'll see on a 50 meg line, 50 meg down, 2 meg up. It's asymmetrical, hence ADSL. From there, we saw a jump to cable modem. That's the DOCSIS standard, data over cable. That's your DOCSIS. You're seeing, speeds in the hundreds of megabits a second. This is a really robust, thick cable network. The copper is much thicker than your traditional dial-up, your twisted pair. Much thicker cable, much higher speeds on average. And this is a much more robust, it's a newer network. But really, the holy grail to the house is FTTH, fiber to the home. With fiber, all digital, it's all light. There's very little copper. That last section may be copper to the house, but really, fiber to the home is what's going to give us that reliable 1 gigabit per second or more to everyone's home. Fiber really is the key that's going to make the internet take that next leap as a lot of us transition to more devices in the house, more capabilities in the house, and more people working from home. Okay, so let's talk about what happens when your internet signal gets to the house and gets converted to Wi-Fi or wireless fidelity. Computers communicate via a protocol called Ethernet. Back before Wi-Fi was a standard, you had to have your computer physically plugged in to the modem to get those internet signals. Nowadays, Wi-Fi is pretty common, pretty prevalent. Modems are cheap. Wi-Fi routers are cheap. A lot of homes, most homes have Wi-Fi. It's also available in public areas. Wi-Fi comes in two flavors. 2.4 gigahertz, which is how it started. Nowadays, you have a lot of 5 gigahertz. You rarely see 5 gigahertz by itself. They usually come in what's called a dual band modem. 2.4 for that far reach. It's a lower frequency, it gets a little bit farther, goes through walls better. 5 gigahertz provides you a little bit better speeds. It's more spectral dense. It gets you better bandwidth when you're close in, but it doesn't reach as far as 2.4. So really the best Wi-Fi routers are ones that have a combination of 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. Now, your average Wi-Fi router in a house is gonna cover about 1,000 square feet, give or take. Anything above 1,000, you're gonna start to see a reduction in speeds. As you get farther from your Wi-Fi router in your house, notice your speeds are gonna decrease. In most houses, A single Wi-Fi router is going to work fine, but it may not get good service to all the rooms in the house. You may see some trouble spots here or here in the back parts of your house if your service comes in one side. It rarely comes in the middle of the house. It's usually in one corner of the house or one wall of the house, so the far ends don't get that great a service if your house is greater than 1,000, 1,200 square feet. And that's where the mesh networks come into play. What you have is your ISP, your internet service provider, either via a DSL, a cable modem, a fiber link, to your modem. The long haul protocol and the Ethernet protocol are different, so you need a modem to convert that signal. And then your Wi-Fi router, your second box, is what takes that signal and turns it into a wireless link. They do have devices that have both the modem and the router in one device, or you can buy your own. You can have a separate modem and a separate Wi-Fi network. You can have two different boxes or one combination box. It's up to you how you want to do it. So really, Wi-Fi will get the average home of 1,000, maybe 1,200 square foot, pretty good service all throughout. But what happens if you are in a house that's bigger than that, that's more than 1,200 square feet, and you're getting that bad service in the back rooms? What do? So one of the options you have is to use a range extender. That takes the signal from your central Wi-Fi router and boosts it as you go down so you can reach farther. So if your Wi-Fi router only gets this far, you can use range extenders to get farther and farther and farther. The problem is a range extender uses part of either the 2.4 gig or the 5 gig network. So as you pull farther, as you put more of these range extenders, you're consuming bandwidth that you need to make the signals work. And as you get farther and farther or put more range extenders, that boost becomes less and less effective. Also, these range extenders have their own unique network identifier, so you have to know, am I on this network or that network or this network? So range extenders were a first attempt to really take Wi-Fi into larger spaces, into bigger homes, and they don't work very well. Yes, one can help, but any more than one, and you're really starting to create more problems than you're solving. So what do? If you need to get good, robust Wi-Fi all throughout your home, all throughout your office or warehouse, or whatever you need to have covered, you need that Wi-Fi. Tearing out the walls, putting in new Ethernet Category 5 or Category 6 cables is very expensive. How do you solve that problem? You can solve it with a Wi-Fi mesh network. As we talked about with the range extenders, the more you add, the more the performance of the network drops off. There's a significant drop off when you add more than one range extender. You might get by with one, it's like a band-aid, but really the more you put on, the worse and worse that signal gets. Also with the range extender, you have a different network name, a different SSID. With a mesh network, you have the same SSID. So that same network, Bill's Wi-Fi, Jill's home service, it's the same with every single device. So you have your main Wi-Fi router of the mesh network, and you have a series of satellites placed all throughout your house, and what they do is they link to each other. So this might be your 1,000 square feet of coverage right here, but you can pull that into 2,500, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 square feet using a mesh network. You just add more satellite units. You've got your main unit where your internet comes into your modem, and that's your central point, your main unit, and you have your satellite units, and they create that mesh network. The far network, the far satellite doesn't need to connect to the main. It can connect through the other satellites. That's the mesh concept, and it uses a third frequency. It doesn't consume your 2.4 gigahertz band or your 5 gigahertz band. It uses a third channel to make those connections. And what it does is it preserves that performance. So when you've got good performance close to your main Wi-Fi router, that performance is consistent from node to node, from satellite to satellite. So mesh networks work really, really well. They're a little pricey to get a complete network with 2 or 3 or 4 satellite units, but they're worth the money because they work really well. If you're seeing 100 megabits here and you pull that network into the far reaches of your home or warehouse, you're still going to see high 80s, high 90s, maybe even 100. They work really well. I highly recommend mesh networks. There's a lot of different brands on the market. You can get them from your ISP. They will rent you a modem and they will rent you a complete mesh network. You can buy your own if you want to buy your own. Obviously, it's going to cost you a little bit more money up front, or you can rent one from AT&T, from Sonic, from Xfinity. They have their own products. Another key feature of the mesh networks, they give you visibility to all the different devices that are connected to the network. And then what you can do is, using your phone, your tablet, your PC, when you're signed into your mesh network, you can turn off devices, you can see the different speeds, you can check the performance, you can check and see which of your satellite devices are still on air and working. And you can do this remotely. They're really, really wonderful ways to take Wi-Fi from a small room in your house to cover your entire house or your entire business. So thank you so much for joining me today and watching my video on Wi-Fi mesh networks. I hope you found it informative. I'm a big fan, if you couldn't tell, of Wi-Fi mesh networks. I use one at my house and it works fantastic. I love that it uses the same SSID, the same name for the network all throughout the house. If you have multiple range extenders, they all have their own unique name. Makes it kind of a pain to manage. This doesn't. Wi-Fi mesh works great. Thank you so much. Again, I'm Martin Hevesy. Any questions you have, put them in the comments below. I'll get to them as soon as I can. And look for more videos coming shortly on more topics in cellular and wireless. Thank you.